So welcome to session number 4 for our secondary community of practice for behavior. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Christine Manning. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Dina. Thanks for being here, you guys. We're going to use our chat feature today. And so before we get started, I want to make sure that you guys are actually there and ready to chat with me. So if you have access to your computer, can you just tell me how your day has been? Let's see if we can get some chats going this morning or this afternoon. Oh my goodness. It is not this morning. Who is out there? We're going to use the chat, so I'm hoping you guys will do that. Oh, long. Busy but good. Holly, good. Fast. Oh, good. Leslie. Wonderful. Well, thank you guys for being here. And I hope you guys will use the chat today because I really want to make sure that as we go through these things, we have some good discussion and things. So, oh no, sorry you've been sick. Looks like you're starting to feel a little better. So hopefully that continues, LaDonna. So I'm glad that you guys are going to use the chat and we're going to go through and we'll have a lot of interaction today, which will be fun. And then next week, we're going to have even more than that. So good, Brady. I'm glad that your day's been pretty good overall. That's great. So welcome. We are going to talk about a lot of things today. The first part is going to be a little bit of review, but we are going to go over understanding that behavior occurs for a reason. And all behavior that we engage in throughout our day, we do for some reason or another. So we'll talk about some of those reasons why our students may engage in specific behaviors. We're going to review and understand antecedents and consequences and how they relate to behavior. We did introduce that 2 weeks ago when we met. So hopefully you've had some opportunity to play around a little bit with an ABC data collection sheet. We're going to talk about the 4 most common functions of behavior. We're going to hypothesize functions in real life situations, and then we're going to implement a variety of function matched interventions. If the interventions that we implement for a student aren't tied directly to the function of their behavior or why they're engaging in that behavior, it's going to be kind of like throwing spaghetti noodles at the wall and hoping something sticks. And so we want to give you guys the best opportunity at implementing interventions that will stick, and you'll start to see behavior change and shape in the direction that we want it to go, which is learning new skills and new behaviors. So we have a lot to go over, but I'm hoping that some of this is a review so we can go through it quickly. So as I mentioned, behavior understandably happens for a reason. We all do things to get something or get out of something. And we're going to talk a little bit about our adult behaviors that we engage in, but everything that we do and say is for something. There's some function or some reason behind us engaging in that behavior. So just understanding the why behind a student's behavior, specifically talking about problem behaviors. Obviously, we're not going to take functional behavior data on why a student raises their hand because that's not problematic, generally speaking, right? And so we want to take data and make sure that we have good data on behaviors that are concerning to us or behaviors that we would like to decrease, and then what skills do we need to increase simultaneous to that. So behavior does not just occur in a vacuum. It just does not occur for no reason. And I work with staff and students all the time where they will say, you know, staff might say, this just happens out of the blue. And it might look like it happens out of the blue. And that's why it's so important that we take antecedent behavior consequence data so that we can start to see some patterns in that behavior occurring that we may have missed if we just look at it as a behavior in and of itself. There's always things that lead up to people making choices to engage in certain behaviors or not. Behavior always serves a purpose. If you go to work, you probably go to work to get money so that you can buy the things that you would like to purchase, right? If you go to the gym, that's probably because it gives you some kind of high or some kind of pleasure, or maybe you're fitting into your clothes better. You get something out of those behaviors that you engage in. If the gym wasn't producing any results, you would probably stop going as frequently, or maybe stop going altogether, right? We're human beings. We are living breathing organisms. And just like any other living organism, we want quick and easy solutions, right? And so we want things that are going to be fast and have the greatest reinforcers for the smallest amount of work, right? And we see people that want to get more for less. They want to do less for more. And that's just kind of human nature and the way that we're created. That's why we have fast food restaurants, is because we're tired and we're busy and we want something fast and easy and as inexpensive as possible that we can run home and feed the kids when we get home or feed ourselves. So our job is to be a scientist. Our job is to figure out why behavior is occurring. When we have an idea of why that behavior may be occurring, then we can put in function matched interventions to help support that behavior and help teach the kids the skills that they need to engage in better behaviors over time. And this is science. And I know I've said this to you guys before, but science has proven that there are functional relations between antecedents, or what happens prior to a behavior, and consequences that happen after a behavior that can change and shape that behavior, right? So when we manipulate antecedents and consequences, they change behavior. And so that is the scientific way that I look at things. Antecedents prevent, antecedent interventions can prevent behavior from happening. Consequences can do other things, and we're going to talk about what those are. So here we're going to understand and review our antecedents and consequences in relation to behavior. So this we talked about a couple weeks ago, but I just want to remind us. Antecedents are things that happen prior to a behavior that may set the occasion for the behavior to occur. Remember, behavior does not occur in a vacuum. It does not happen for no reason at all. There are things that lead up to that. Some of those things we may be able to observe. Some of those things we may not be able to observe. They may be private events that are within a student, their thoughts or their feelings or their emotions, that we may not be able to see a behavior coming. But there are antecedents that lead up to that. And so sometimes, especially for older kids, sometimes we may have to ask, hey, what was going on today, right? Well, my girlfriend broke up with me during first period and I'm really ticked off, right? So that's an antecedent too, if there were any, following behavior, even if the student is somber or angry, that antecedent could have been that girlfriend breaking up with him, and you may not have even been aware of that antecedent. So a lot of times we can get antecedents, especially from our older kids, just by talking to them and finding out what's going on in their lives. Remember, a behavior is something that a person does that creates observable and measurable changes in the environment. When we are taking data on behavior, we want to make sure that we have that behavior operationally defined, that it's something that we see, something that we hear, and we're not putting other labels on it like, well, he's depressed, right? What does depressed look like? It can look different for different kids in different moments. And so we want to make sure that instead of using depressed, we might say he slept throughout my class today. Sleeping does not equal depressed. However, it could be a cause of depression, right? It could be a contributing factor that depression may make somebody more lethargic or more sleepy, but we can see somebody sleeping for 25 minutes. We can't really see depression, and it manifests different in every person. So making sure that we have behavior defined so that it's something that when I see it and you see it, we are both seeing the same thing, right? And then consequences are things that happen after the behavior occurs, and consequences can do one of three things. Consequences can maintain that behavior so that it keeps going. It can increase that behavior. It gets worse, either duration may be longer, magnitude may be more intense, but consequences that are reinforcing a behavior can definitely increase those poor or bad, challenging behaviors, and it can decrease future behavior. So we can manipulate antecedents so that the behavior doesn't happen at all, or it's far less likely to occur. We can also manipulate consequences that, if the consequence is appropriate, it will diminish or decrease that behavior from happening in the future. We're going to talk a lot more about this. I want to give you guys an ABC example. It's not all just A, B, and C and we're done. Sometimes that ABC goes on and on. So this is a string of antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. I have it labeled A is for antecedent, B is the behavior, and then C is the consequence. And sometimes that consequence then functions as the antecedent to the next behavior. So I want to show this to you guys. The teacher hands out the math assignment. That's the antecedent. The student crawls under the desk. I can see them crawling under the desk. I can measure how long they're under there. It's a behavior that I can observe and I can measure. The consequence is the teacher tells the student to get off the floor and get back to work, right? So that's a consequence. It can also function as an antecedent to the next behavior. So the next behavior is the student yelling, math is stupid. That's the behavior. And then the teacher reminds the student to be quiet. That's the consequence. And then also the antecedent to the next behavior. So ABC, some people think about it as ABC and it goes in rows across a page. Some people think about it in a cyclical manner. However is best for you to think about that visual of what that can mean to you so that you understand that. It's important to note that sometimes those antecedents and behavior consequences go on and on and on, and you have a loop of additional behaviors and consequences looped together. So then after the teacher reminds the student to be quiet, that's the consequence. Also the antecedent for the next behavior, the student begins to yell louder. And then the teacher sends the student to the office is the consequence. Then for the teacher, game over, right? We're done. The kid is out of our class. So if we looked at this, we have reasons why a student may have crawled under the desk when the teacher handed out the math assignment. And that is what we want to come to, is trying to figure out why the student engaged in this behavior. And that will be the function. And when I write a behavior intervention plan for a student, I put on my paperwork that this is a hypothesized function, right? Because we can kind of look at all of that data and get a good idea of what that function is probably going to be. Sometimes we may be wrong, and sometimes it may have multiple functions or multiple reasons why the student engages in this behavior. So we will come back to this a little bit later, but I wanted to show you guys that ABC data, when you take that, it can be, you have ABC, 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 and you have line upon line. But so in this scenario, the student is sent out of the room. So if the function of the behavior was to escape the math assignment or avoid the math assignment, then the kid won, right? The student was sent to the office, and regardless of whether or not that student returns to class, maybe the assignment is done and the teacher says, take it home and bring it back, take it home for homework and then bring it back. A lot of times that won't happen, right? And so the student has successfully gotten out of class. They have successfully received what they wanted, which was escape from that assignment. And then what if they went to the office and the principal had said, come on in, bud, what's going on? Tell me how things are going today. Maybe that's enjoyable that student gets some one-on-one attention from the principal. Maybe he gets walked back to class, but he got a lot of attention and he got to escape the assignment. And then we may not ever get that assignment turned in. Inadvertently, those consequences as a result from the behaviors that the student engaged in, those consequences could have been reinforcing to that student. And so if the student was trying to get out of the math assignment and or get attention from the principal, we just reinforced that behavior, which were him crawling under the desk, yelling math is stupid, and then beginning to yell louder. So a lot of times as teachers and as parents, we're guilty of inadvertently reinforcing problem behavior. And I'll tell you, if a behavior is continuing to happen over and over again, then somehow the consequences or the events or things that happen after the behavior occurs are preferred or desired by that student. And so first thing, we want to make sure that we put antecedent interventions in place so that it prevents the behavior from happening in the first place. There are so many reasons why that would be a better alternative to prevent that behavior from happening. But if it happens, we have to be really careful what happens on the end. And I'm just going to use a disclaimer here. I've seen a lot of behavior intervention plans over the last several years that I've been working in schools with behavior specifically. And sometimes the data will say to represent the demand to the student. So in this example, they would just continue to redirect the student to the math assignment. Sometimes that's a bad decision on our part because the student may become more agitated and maybe even become aggressive. And so there are times that we need to step back and look at what we're asking them to do and say, you know, there's a reason why this student is not engaging in this work. There are previous webinars to this one. Go back and look at some of the ways that you can support student learning and student behavior by altering what we're asking them to do, really understanding what they can do and where they're at, how we can meet them where they're at. So even though this student in this scenario got out of doing the math assignment, we can then look at it after the fact and say, what can we do differently to help them engage in the behavior that we need to, which is completion of the work, the math work. All right, so antecedents are important, and I always have a big section for antecedent interventions in the behavior plans that I write, because I don't want the behavior to occur. I don't want kids to feel ashamed that they have been aggressive or that they have run from the school. I don't want the behavior to happen. That has so many ramifications for the student, particularly as they get older. They start to have peers that maybe not want to be by them. They have staff that don't want to work with them. It really becomes a sad thing. And so we want to put those antecedents in place. And antecedent interventions are directly tied to the antecedents that you're going to see when you collect your ABC data. So there's functional relations, as I said earlier. We can manipulate antecedents and consequences to decrease problem behavior or get rid of it altogether. In addition to that, while we're working on those things, we also want to think about what skill does this child need to learn so that they can be successful in getting their needs met without engaging in this behavior. We're going to talk about all of that today. Antecedent interventions prevent behavior. As I mentioned, there's lots of reasons why we would want to prevent it. It takes so much time to deal with a problem behavior after the fact. We don't want to have to evacuate classrooms and all of the other things that come from all of those behaviors. We want to be able to nip it in the bud and move on so that child is not only successful, but they're also engaging in their learning and they're in the environment they're supposed to be in. Antecedents, looking at antecedents also allows us as teachers to say, oh my gosh, this kid always freaks out when we give them the independent math assignment. What's going on here? How can I support this student? What do they need? How can I differentiate or modify the work so that they can do it, so that they can be successful in my classroom? Our goal as teachers is to teach, right? And to help kids be successful and grow. And so instead of looking at behavior through a lens where this kid is bad, they're trying to get out of things, they don't want to be here, they're not motivated, they're defiant, maybe looking at it from a lens of what can I do to support this child so that they are successful, so that they aren't defiant? How can I modify or adjust what I'm asking them so that I can get results from them and they can feel successful? It also may trigger child find. And I'm sure you guys are all aware, this is a federal law where if we have students that are not making progress, if we have students that cannot access that general education curriculum, and we've gone through the response to intervention process, meaning our tiered intervention supports, our multi-tiered systems of supports, and we have kids that have received additional instruction and all of those things that are within that tiered model, then maybe it would trigger a referral to special education services. And even though you guys are teaching higher grades, most of you can have a student that's in high school that maybe has been missed. And so don't let those kids continue to suffer and be unsuccessful if you feel like there may be some special education needs and they may need to be referred. Our consequences are very important also. Like I mentioned earlier, the consequences are what either keeps behavior going or stops behavior, right? And so what happens after the behavior, we really need to be thoughtful about, not meaning that we don't make mistakes, not meaning that if there's a kid going into crisis and he wants a Dr. Pepper right this second, or he's going to hurt somebody, I would give him the Dr. Pepper. And then I would look at what are all of the factors, what is going on here, what do we need to teach, and how do we teach this kid to get his needs met in an appropriate way, right? And so there's going to be times that we have to give in, kind of like the screaming kid at the grocery store. You just need to get your dinner and get out. Maybe you give your kid a sucker just so that you can get through, but then reflecting and saying, what do I need to do different next time so that we can have a successful grocery store trip, a successful class period, and not reinforce poor behavior. So like I mentioned earlier, behavior that continues to happen is being reinforced some way. And so those consequences are maintaining that behavior to continue going. Behavior that diminishes or stops has been punished. So whatever happened after the behavior, that consequence has stopped or diminished that behavior from happening as often, or maybe the magnitude has decreased. We can manipulate consequences, but it's never as simple as it is to manipulate antecedents. And also when we look at consequences, the behavior's already happened. And so that in and of itself is sad. We don't want to let that behavior happen in the first place if we can help it. So looking at antecedents and consequences allows us to see patterns in behavior. If you guys have taken any antecedent behavior consequence data and you start looking for those patterns, maybe you notice that, gosh, Christine only flips out between 11 and 12 every day. What's happening between 11 and 12? Well, it's the hour prior to lunch. And I know that Christine's mom reports that she doesn't eat breakfast in the morning because her medication makes her tummy hurt. What can I do to help Christine? Is it that she's hungry? Is it that we're doing social skills, role play, and she hates that? What can we do differently in what we're doing? If it's specially designed instruction, if it's a subject, if it's a peer, if it's a teacher, whatever it is, how can we alter that to be a little bit better so that Christine has a better opportunity to engage in good behavior between 11 and 12 and not engage in that problem behavior. Those antecedents and consequences also help us understand why a behavior is occurring. And the why is the function, right? The function tells us, hey, we are hypothesizing that this child might be engaging in this behavior because of this reason. Then we can put in interventions that tie exactly to that reason. I worked in a school up in Ogden a few years back, and there was a little girl and she loved stickers. And so we bought her these puffy kitten stickers. She loved kitten stickers. You know, the puffy stickers, they were so cool. And not only are they puffy, but they had googly eyes. And I love me some googly eyes, right? I taught elementary school for a while, so that's just fun. So we were thinking that she would just love these stickers and she would do anything for them. Well, we were giving her these stickers and she said, I don't really like these kind of stickers. I just want regular stickers. And so we were giving her something for engaging in appropriate behavior that she didn't really want. And so why should she continue to engage in appropriate behavior when we're giving her stickers when she wants to earn something different? Or the function of her behavior may not have warranted earning stickers at all. Maybe it's when she gets done with her assignment, she can do something preferred. right? And so as we're looking at all of the factors surrounding behavior, we want to make sure that we understand why a behavior is happening, give support, teach skills, and then make sure that reinforcement is something that the child wants to earn and will engage in appropriate behavior so that they can earn those things. Also, when we are looking at antecedents and consequences, we can turn bad behavior on and off like a faucet. It's awesome. It's a science. You don't put in the wrong inputs and get out the wrong output, right? It's science. So it's fun as a behavior analyst when I can go in and just turn bad behavior off. I spent all day today up at a school. It was a lot of fun. A very aggressive little girl. When I figured out what her functions of her behavior were, I literally went in and modeled for those teachers. I just met her today. And sometimes my day doesn't go as well as today. I'll be honest, sometimes I get in and it's a little bit harder than that. But once you learn what those functions of behavior are and what those antecedents are, you can really turn behavior off like that, right? And so if you're pushing a child to do something that they don't want to do, they can't do, they have no interest in doing, and you're pushing and pushing and pushing, you're going to get worse behavior and probably get punched in the neck, right? Have something worse happen. When you do see those functional relations and you do know those antecedents, it'll be really easy for you to say, what can I do differently to help this kid be successful? And you'll be able to implement those interventions, and it's awesome. And we don't want kids at school all day who are being unsuccessful. You wouldn't want to be at work all day if you couldn't get your needs met and you couldn't communicate that and you were unsuccessful going home exasperated at the end of the day, right? Our kids don't want to either. They want to be successful. Also helps us understand and prevent future behavior from occurring. And it also allows us to say, hey, here's where this kid is deficient in some of their skills. How do we teach behavior? How do we teach this kid how to get their needs met? Not all kids can say, teacher, may I have a break, please? It's pretty rare, actually, where we start with that behavior. We're starting with throwing a break card on the desk and walking out, right? We're starting with whatever that kid can do to functionally communicate. That does not have to be vocal language. That does not have to be raising your hand, waiting for the teacher. Then the teacher says, no, you don't need a break right now. We just started this. You can take a break later. How many are guilty of doing that? I know I am. When we have a student that's asking for a break, we need to give a break. And then a break needs to be a break, right? Somewhere where they can go and decompress. They can self-regulate rather than they get to go play with transformers in the corner. That is not a break, that is a reward. Those two things need to be separate. Also being mindful, what skills does this child need to learn? Right now they're throwing a break card on the desk and they're walking out of the room and they're standing in their little duct tape square in the hallway until I can get to them. How can we shape that behavior so that they are asking more appropriately or that they are staying in class, which is the ultimate goal. We want them to not have to be removed from the class if they don't have to be. All right, data collection. We talked about this 2 weeks ago when we met, and it's super awesome. Make sure that you're taking data in the moment as it happens. I was at a school today and I literally took data on everything as it happened. After the end of about an hour and a half, I started seeing those patterns in my notes. And before I even left the school, I said, hey, why don't we check these things and talk to these people and see if we can do some of these things? And the teacher was like, I don't know why I couldn't see that. And I said, that's because I come in and I'm looking at one student and what their needs are. You're looking at 500 different things that you have to do throughout the day. I have the option and the opportunity to sit back and kind of watch what's happening with this child. We want to take that data. You will start to see patterns the very day you start taking that data, and then you'll have ideas of ways you can support better behavior and growth from this student. Taking ABC data is where you're going to look at finding the function of the behavior. You want to write down what those antecedents are. You want to write down those consequences. What subject is the student in? Not only what subject, but what's the activity, right? Is it transition? Is it partner work? Is it coming in from recess? What is going on in that environment? as much as you can so that you can start to see like, oh my gosh, this kid starts having behavior right before lunch, and then he gets to the lunchroom and then he has a problem and then comes back. Well, is that because the lunchroom is overwhelming? Is that because they don't like to go to the lunchroom? Is that because someone's bullying them in the hallway on the way to the lunchroom? What is going on? And getting all of that information, the more information you have, the better. It doesn't have to be a story. It can just be little notes here and there on what you observed. And then we talked about environmental variables in our primary session on Tuesday. I'm not going to cover them here, but environmental variables are other things in that environment that may contribute to or set that tone for behavior to be more likely. I know for me, if I'm hot, I'm a little bit more irritable, and I probably don't have as good of behavior as I would if I were not hot. When I'm hungry, when I have not slept well, when I have my partner and I are arguing, I might have other factors that you may not be able to see, but they may set the tone for me to just be a little bit more irritable. And you guys know that there are some of our students that show up to school and it's like walking on eggshells because they're always like trigger hair. What can we do to help support them in feeling better? What can we do with our homeschool collaboration that we might be able to support the kid coming to school in a little bit better mood or ready to be at school and be happy at school? Make sure your data is clear and concise. We don't want to put a whole bunch of subjective stuff in there. We don't want to say our opinion or, hey, it's just because he was at dad's house last night and every time he's at dad's house, he comes to school grumpy. That may be the case, but we can still measure what we see or what the student reports instead of our own projection on why or why not a student may be engaging in those behaviors. And then just remember, subjective data not collected in the moment, and data taken later or just written down or told to somebody later is often incorrect. It's often reflecting that behavior is far worse than it really was. So make sure that you guys are good data collectors. All right, the four most common functions of behavior are to escape or avoid, which is getting out of doing something or engaging in something or going somewhere. I worked with a kiddo, he was in 4th grade, and he would have a behavior right before recess, like clockwork. What is going on at recess? Well, he didn't want to go out to recess. He didn't have any friends. We found out he was being kind of targeted. I wouldn't call it bullying, but maybe targeted by a couple of other kids. He didn't like being too cold. He didn't like wearing his coat. There were a lot of things, but once we learned all of those things, we were able to help give him some interventions to help him so that eventually he could go out to recess. Forcing him to go out would have been kind of a terrible thing. We needed to teach skills based on the information that we received when we got all of the data together, right? It can be attention. So sometimes kids like that good, positive attention. I work with a lot of kids in high school that really just maybe like that bad attention, right? From peers and from adults. And that's tricky to deal with, putting appropriate interventions in place for them and teaching them that getting good attention is much more fulfilling than resorting to bad attention. Access to a tangible item or an activity, and then sensory. Sometimes we do things to get access to sensory stimulation. The little girl that I was observing today had a lot of standing, spinning, laying on the floor, jumping. She just had a lot of need to get herself input. She also engaged in a lot of vocal noises and clicking and things like that. That could be that she was trying to access sensory either orally by making the sound or maybe even auditorially by hearing the sounds that she was making. I'm not an occupational therapist, but I could tell there was some things going on just looking at the patterns of those behaviors. It wasn't distracting to the class because she was kind of off to the side, but it's clearly a need that she has that we can look at interventions that are function matched and help with what she's needing. And sometimes we have kids that need to get away from sensory stimulation, right? The noises, the lights, the commotion in the classroom. Maybe there's people that are arguing. Maybe they're listening to a discussion on a book that upset them. I know I have a daughter, and when she was in high school, they read a book that was very upsetting to her. And so when they discussed the book in class, she would have a lot of panic and anxiety and have to leave the classroom. And so we just made other arrangements for her. She didn't have to sit in and listen to the discussion of that book because it was really hard for her. She had an alternate assignment. Okay, and so they just gave her something different, that she still was accountable for reading a book and doing all of that work, but she didn't have to read the book that was upsetting to her and sit through discussion that was upsetting to her. She needed to get away from that. And so we can have lots of things that happen that we can see, like the little girl spinning and jumping and rolling on the floor and all of those things. And then things that we may not be able to see, like fear and panic and anxiety over some of the things that happen in a book discussion group. Okay, so we're going to use our chat. So if you guys are there, get your fingers ready. So here are some examples of escape and avoid. So escape from class, right? So some kids may be sloughing your class or tardy to your class. Maybe they don't really care about your class and they just want to get out of it for any reason. They may be avoiding a peer in the hallway or avoiding a specific location in the school. They may be trying to escape a writing assignment or avoid answering a question posed by the teacher. I bet you guys all have been in that class where you did not do the reading or you did not do the preparation work. And when the teacher starts asking questions, you put your head down, like, I'm really not here, don't call on me, right? You're avoiding, by your behavior of looking down and avoiding the teacher's gaze, that you'll be less likely, hopefully, to be called on. So those are examples of escape or avoidance. What are some other ones that you guys see? Just pop them into the chat and let's see if we have other scenarios, you guys. I hope you guys are there. What are some other ways our kids may escape or avoid? Oh, good. Asking to go to the bathroom, yes. Oh, not turning in their assignment because they don't want to receive a bad grade. Love it. Bathroom. Yep. I used to send my paraeducators out and I'm like, you guys need to go fishing. Get those kids out of the bathroom. They're just going to be there today. And that will help us understand like what we can do different, right? If we have a kid that goes to the bathroom at the same time every day, or when we are engaging in certain activities, we can say, oh, let's see what's going on here and if I can change anything to make it better for them. Begin talking to others to create distraction. That's right, LaDonna. Good. Get sent out of the room. Good, Sarah. Go to the nurse or need to call home. Good, Julie. Yeah. Lots of ways that we can escape, right? And if kids can't get it done, if they ask for escape, sometimes they'll just not show up, or sometimes they'll leave without permission, right? Taking a lap to reset, that's great. Yeah, good. And that's appropriate, right, Brady? Taking a lap to say, hey, I need a break for a minute, that's an appropriate escape, coming back, and that's what we want to teach. So that's awesome. All right, so attention. And I didn't realize how creepy that clown was. I'm sorry, now that it's like large on my screen, I'm like, whoa, that's scary. So like I mentioned earlier, attention can be good attention or bad attention, right? And so being the class clown, that may be appropriate at times in your lesson or in your instruction. And there are times where it probably isn't, right? And so teaching a student, hey, when I'm giving instruction, I don't really want you to joke around and tell jokes and things like that. But then when I'm done and we're all just kind of collaborating and, you know, engaged in different activities, then that would be a time that would be appropriate, right? It could be swearing, telling jokes, good jokes or bad jokes. I think I've heard them all, or talking to the teacher or peers. What are some other examples of how your kids may get attention, either good or bad attention? I also notice in this picture, like their heads are really big. I'm sorry, that's a little on the creepy side. Putting their head down on the desk, pretending to sleep. Oh, yep, that's a escape. Good, Jessica, thank you. Being off topic might be getting attention, especially if they say something random, right? Or something that's like slightly inappropriate. Our older kids are good at that. Using the new slang. Yep, good, Brady. Using the new slang to get a reaction. Sometimes some of the kids that I work with are involved in some gang activity, and sometimes they will puff themselves up or like lurch toward kids or even staff to kind of you know, look like they're afraid of them, and a lot of times they are afraid of them, and so that gives them that attention and they think that's funny, right? And so teaching them better ways of doing those things can be difficult. Good job. A good reaction is showing their work to the class. Yeah, that's great. Teaching them how to solicit good attention, Brady. I really love that. And you can teach kids, especially kids, you know, when I work with kids in schools, I will work with the teacher, but I'll also work with the student. If the student is able to say, hey, look, teacher, I'm turning in my homework, that is soliciting attention from that teacher. And then the teacher can respond by saying, hey, great job. Thank you. I know that was a difficult assignment, right? And so helping on both sides, the teacher to recognize when a kiddo needs attention, and also teaching the child, if they have the skills and abilities to do so, to solicit that from the teacher or from their peers, which is appropriate, right? And I mentioned this in the primary session. I used to think of attention as just a function of behavior, as a want. And I think I've changed my perspective on that a little bit, just working with so many schools and so many kids. I feel like they're literally starving sometimes for attention, and it is a need to be communicated with somebody, to be cared about by someone, to have someone talk to you or ask you how you're doing. You guys that are in these older grades, really be mindful of trying to give those kids a little bit of attention whenever you can. I think there's a lot of our kids that don't get that. All right, next one is access to a tangible or activity. They can access their phone, an assembly, the iPad, the after-school dance. It can be all kinds of things, but any kind of tangible or activity that they may want. And then the sensory. It can be access to sensory or removal from sensory. That might be pacing. That might be using noise canceling headphones when there's a project-based learning going on. That may be taking a break or taking a lap, like Brady said, something where you're excusing yourself for a minute, regulating yourself, and then returning to the environment or the activity. It could be headphones. There are a lot of sensory things. I'm not an occupational therapist, but there are things that you can see that our kids are trying to get or get out of as far as sensory goes, and you guys can help with those things. There are a lot of interventions that do not require the need of an OT. All right, we're going to hypothesize functions in real life situations. Here's your 4 functions. And I'm going to read the bottom, and then you guys can put in the function in the chat. So a high school student is telling off-color jokes during class. Students and even the teacher are laughing. Just looking at that and not assuming anything else, what would you assume or hypothesize the function to be? Number 2, or attention. Good. And if they're off-color jokes, probably that attention is going to be, hey, bud, let's keep it clean, right? Good, good. All right, next one. A student is tardy to your class. Well, a student is tardy every day to your class. What might the function be? Yeah, escape or avoid. Good. And just using that context, right? That might be what it is. And if I said something like, hey, the student is late to your class every day, they're at their locker checking their cell phone, then that might be access to a tangible item, right? So you can see how a little bit more information can change what that function is. So it's never as cut and dry as this is, but that's why you look at all of the data together. All right, a student sleeps through your lesson. What do you guys think? Yeah, it could be to avoid, yeah, to escape or avoid. It can also be that they're tired, right? So it doesn't have to be necessarily a bad thing. Oh, I don't know why my screen sharing is paused. Is it? All right, a student becomes agitated over the loud debate over the book. What do you guys think there? 4, sensory. Yeah, and I guess I shouldn't have given the example of my daughter because that kind of maybe have given it away a little bit. But it could be that just the arguing. I do not like to be around people who are really loud. And it, arguing is something that I don't like to be around. All right, now we're going to implement a variety of function-matched interventions. Is my screen, can somebody say in the chat, is my screen paused? It looks like I'm not sharing, but am I? Yes, okay, thank you guys. Appreciate that. All right, here we go. So the high school student is telling off-color jokes. We hypothesize the function as being attention, right? So we need to teach every single time. We are teachers. We want to make sure that we're teaching skills, not just getting rid of a behavior, but we're changing that behavior to something better, right? So we need to teach how to get attention in appropriate ways and when that time is that they should use those new skills, right? And so don't just shut down one behavior, teach better behavior. And that is done by the process of shaping. It's going to gradually get better if we're reinforcing the new behavior and we're giving less attention to the behavior that was not good. Oh, all right. So here are some function matched interventions. And yes, it's FMI. And I know you guys are probably so tired of acronyms, but a function matched intervention for attention, depending on the student, depending on the scenario. I just gave you a few here. There are a lot, right? So you can schedule activities so that that student can receive attention, right? Part of the core standards are presenting information. In every grade, I think there's some kind of speaking, listening, presenting information. So give a scheduled activity for a time in your class period for the student to tell an appropriate joke or to show a skill that they've learned or to give a presentation on something that they enjoy, right? You may have times that they receive attention. So maybe you have them help you take roll or tell a joke of the day to start class off on Friday mornings, or hand out papers or collect papers, anything that they can get attention in other ways. And you might have to work on helping them to do those things, but you also might have to work on the side of the other kids to say, hey man, thanks for giving me my paper. That's giving appropriate attention just by saying thank you, right? You can give non-contingent reinforcement for attention. I tell teachers to do this to every kid every day. Just give the kids some attention. They all need it. They all want it. That relationship, building those relationships are important for every student, and they'll make more progress and be more willing to do what you ask them to do if you have that relationship with them. Give them a job or a class responsibility. They may do peer tutoring. That, and again, is something that may need some coaching on both sides to make sure that they're actually collaborating on the assignment. But teaching that is really helpful because a lot of our kids get some really good attention that way, and it makes them feel good, and they're helping each other, right? And so your work is less in the long run because you've taught them how to collaborate and help one another. Have partners or project work. Self-management skills, and this could be a check-in, check-out kind of a thing. So maybe you have skills that they're working on or behaviors that they're working on a tracker, and they're going to come and check out with you at the end of class or even at the beginning of class, depending on what the needs are. This is a tier 2 intervention. This doesn't have to be done in any certain way, just how you can deliver attention to the student for engaging in the behaviors that you want to see. So that could be a self-management checklist for them. Maybe it's a behavior contract, and at the end of the day or at the end of your class period, you check in to see if they've done their part of the agreement and you've done your part of the agreement, they get some attention, right? It can also be like a mystery motivator. So going back to the week that we did the group contingencies, I taught different group contingencies in the primary session than I did in the secondary session. They work for all grades. I just didn't want to cover the same information since we've got a lot of people who are doing both sessions. But that mystery motivator can be, something that they've earned for the class, and then you choose something or erase something and you see what the mystery motivator is. That's fun. Or maybe they earn something for the class, like, hey guys, we have 5 minutes of extra free time today because so-and-so, told appropriate jokes today, right? So giving them attention for that good behavior and letting them earn something for other people would give them more attention. All right, the student that's tardy, we hypothesize that they're escape. We need to find out why they're escaping and what we can do differently to help them stay in our class, right? And so what is it that they need or need to get out of that we might be able to change what we're doing to help them have better behavior? So we can teach them how to ask for a break, ask for help, ask for clarification or support on assignment, tell the teacher that they don't like sitting by Christine because she's too loud, right? Help them communicate what they need so that we can help them be successful. All right, here are some escape function matched interventions for escape. You might modify the way you're doing something in your classroom. You might modify instruction or how content is being presented. You may modify the task. Is it relevant to them? Is it interesting to them? Is it fun? Is it something that we can change up a little bit to make it better, to make the student want to engage more? Can we modify the difficulty of their assignment or the length of the assignment or the instruction, right? What can we do on our end to make our classroom more reinforcing and more likely that kids will want to be there? Providing choice. The school I was at today was so great. They provided choice in choiceless situations, right? We're going to write a sentence. Do you want to use a pen or this glitter gel pen? And so it wasn't a matter of do you want to write, it was which utensil would you like to write with? And so giving choice when you can and as often as you can. Our kids don't want to be stuck in a class where they're told what, where, and how to do everything. They want some of that autonomy, and they want some of that choice to be able to do some things themselves. Graduated changes in activities, incorporate their interests, modify some of the things you're doing, maybe have more pictures or audio visual, maybe have them vocally answering instead of filling out a worksheet, maybe playing games instead of a worksheet or a project, and then increasing opportunities to respond. And I did talk about those a couple weeks ago as well. All right, the student has their phone out despite reminders to put the phone away. They might want access to that phone. We can teach when is it appropriate time to use your phone. How do you ask to check your phone? Maybe your dog is at the vet today and you're worried about your dog. And so you need to check in on your phone because your mom's going to text you and let you know how your dog is. That would be something that you would want that student to communicate to you. And you would probably want to allow them to check their phone because you know that you would want to be allowed to check your phone if your dog was at the vet sick, right? You can also have scheduled times to access their phone. You can have token economy or group contingency for purchasing phone time the last 5 minutes of class. You can build it into your lesson, have them do poll everywheres or some of those questions where they scan the QR code and they can put the answer to the question in on their phone. It will pop up on your board. first we do this, and then you can have access to your phone, or other enrichment activities to increase engagement. Removal from sensory from the student that becomes agitated over the debate on the book. Teach them how to recognize they're becoming escalated. That is something that's hard to teach our kids. Is your mind racing? Are your palms sweating? Are you feeling agitated? Is your, what are those signs in your physiology that let you know that you might be feeling frustrated and need to step away for a break? And then how do we take that break, and what do we do during that break to help yourself self-regulate so that you can come back to instruction? So here's a few things. You can have a calming or self-regulation strategies. You can use mindfulness activities and visuals. There are a ton of free resources online. You can remove the work demand or part of the work demand, even temporarily, while they're able to regulate themselves, ask for what they need, and then you can have that come back where you say, you know what, you took a break and you did awesome. Why don't you just do 5 out of the 10 problems on your math worksheet? Can you do that? How can I help you get started, right? And then maybe access to headphones, weighted items, and different things like that. When we are problem solving, make sure that we're looking at your ABC data. Make sure that you, secondly, hypothesize the function of that problem behavior, looking at all of that data together. Look at the antecedents and implement antecedent interventions. If an antecedent is writing, which is so often the case with the kids I work with, writing is extremely aversive to a lot of kids. Well, what antecedent interventions can prevent their reaction to writing to escalate to a problem behavior like that, right? Can they do text to speech? Can they use a scribe? Can they write less, right? What are some of those things we can do to support them? We have to have antecedent interventions that directly correlate and tie to the antecedents in that ABC data. Implement function matched interventions according to the function. Don't give a puffy kitten sticker if they don't want a puffy kitten sticker. Teach skills. Most importantly, they're doing this behavior. We need them to do this behavior. How do we teach and make that jump and shape that behavior from the maladaptive behavior to the acceptable behavior? Collaborate with other staff, collaborate with the students, collect data, and then use that data to make future decisions. Don't just take data all day, every day. You will quit your job. Take data occasionally when you need to, and then use that data to say, gosh, every day at 10 to 10:30, we have 50 talkouts. We have 3 days worth of that data. What are we going to do? You don't want to wait and just say, well, he just has 50 talkouts every day from 10 to 10:30. No, that's not acceptable. Let's figure out why, and let's figure out what interventions we can put in place to help support that. I'm going to send you guys a worksheet. Dina will send that out when she sends the recording of this, and it will have these steps on here so that you guys can work through and have kind of a, it's not a decision tree, but it's kind of a step-by-step process to the things you may want to think of and consider when you are looking at determining the function of a student's behavior. So here is that list. And I know there's a lot there, but it goes pretty quick once you get used to it. And I hope that you guys will use this. And I would love you guys to send me your ABC data or email me if you have any questions or anything you want to talk through. I have collaborated with several of you guys, and that's really fun for me. So just reviewing our objectives, I know that was a lot. The hour goes by so fast, but understanding that behavior happens for a reason, and we are detectives to figure out why the behavior is happening so that we can put interventions in place to support better behavior. Making sure that we understand antecedents and consequences in relation to behavior. We talked about the 4 common functions of behavior, hypothesized the functions in real life situations, and then implemented a variety of function matched interventions. Next week, we're going to do a case study where you guys get to look at all of the little pieces and parts that we've done over the last 4 weeks and apply them to a case study to put interventions in place yourselves. So be thinking of maybe a student that you have behaviors challenges with, and collect data over the next couple of weeks so that when we meet, you come ready with a student that you want to help change their behavior. And as always, email me. I'm happy to assist in any way I can. I appreciate you guys for being here. We have one more session. I'm excited to apply everything with you guys, and I will see you in a couple weeks.
Christine, thank you so much. This has been a lot of great information. I'm not sure what happened with the screen. It never did unfreeze after that point, but I will be sending out the slides in the follow-up email. So, and you will get the recording as well. But I did want to give everyone just a couple of minutes. If you have a question for Christine, you're welcome to unmute or put it in the chat. Otherwise, feel free to use those Jamboards. And again, thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And Christine, especially for your time and your expertise. We appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, thanks you guys for being here. If anybody does have simple, basic questions, I'm happy to stay on, like Dina said, and